1 minute it was Ohio winter with doors closed, windows locked, the panes blind with frost, icicles fringing every roof, children skiing on slopes, housewives lumbering like great black bears in their furs along the icy streets, and then a long wave of warmth crossed the small town, a flooding sea of hot air. It seemed as if someone had left a bakery door open. The heat pulsed among the cottages and bushes and children. The icicles dropped, shattering to melt. The doors flew open. The windows flew up. The children worked off their wool clothes. The housewives shed their bare disguises. The snow dissolved and showed last summer's ancient green lawns. Rocket summer. The words passed among the people in the open, airing houses. Rocket summer. The warm desert air changing the frost patterns on the windows, erasing the artwork. The skis and sleds suddenly useless. The snow falling from the cold sky upon the town turned to a hot rain before it touched the ground. Rocket summer. People leaned from their dripping porches and watched the reddening sky. The rocket lay on the launching field, blowing out pink clouds of fire and oven heat. The rocket stood in the cold winter morning, making summer with every breath of its mighty exhausts. The rocket made climates, and summer lay for a brief moment upon the lawn. Hi, my name is Pat, and this is my channel, Book Chat with Pat, and I'm glad that you're here. This is my announcement video for a wonderful, exciting event created by Michael K. Vaughan called Rocket Summer, where we will be reading classic science fiction throughout the month of July. Michael created this event last year, so this July will mark the second annual Rocket Summer. I am deeply honored and absolutely thrilled to have been asked again to be a co-host of this classic science fiction reading event, along with an illustrious crew including Brandy at the Bookeclectic, Steve Donahue, Shawn ShawnDStandfast, Randy L. Ray, the Literate Texan, Mark at Book Time with Elvis, Greg at Another Bibliophile Reads, Gavin at Genre Books 23, Gareth at Books, Songs, and Other Magic, Ben at Grammaticus Books, and Richard Rempel at Vintage SF, and of course, Michael K. Vaughan. I am the science fiction novice of the group, but as I have said in other videos, I have been avidly and enthusiastically reading classic science fiction for the past couple of years since I first discovered Michael K. Vaughan's channel, long before I had thoughts of creating my own channel. And I discovered a genre that I thought I didn't understand was actually one that I love. So this wonderful event is structured in the following way. For the first week of July, we're going to be reading works from the classic science fiction genre, from really the beginning of the genre, which is probably in the late 19th century, up to 1939. The second week of July will be devoted to works of science fiction written in the 1940s. The third week will be devoted to the 1950s. And the final week of July will be devoted to works written in the 1960s. In this video, I would like to discuss some of the possibilities of fiction that I might be reading for each of the 4 weeks of Rocket Summer. Last summer, my first time being a part of, being asked to be a co-host, I read H.G. Wells' Time Machine. And I was thinking that this summer I might read Wells' novel, The War of the Worlds. It was written between 1895 and 1897. It was serialized in Pearson's magazine in the UK and in Cosmopolitan magazine in the US in 1897. It was first published as a whole novel by Heinemann in 1898. This is generally considered the first novel to detail a conflict between the human race and an extraterrestrial race. It has never been out of print in all of the years since its original publication, and it has, of course, spawned many radio dramas, films, comic books, and TV series. The infamous 1938 radio dramatization, directed by and starring Orson Welles, caused absolute havoc among listeners who did not know that the events being described were fictional. When I first started reading science fiction, largely because of Michael K. Vaughan's channel, I first read the first 5 books in Edgar Rice Burroughs' Barsoom series, which starts with The Princess of Mars, which was first serialized in the Pulp magazine, All Story magazine, from February through July 1912. And it's considered a classic example of 20th century pulp fiction and an early example of planetary romance. This is the story of John Carter, a Confederate Civil War veteran who is prospecting in Arizona after the war when he finds himself mysteriously transported to Mars, or Barsoom, as it is known or as it is known by the Martians and as it is called throughout the series. John Carter eventually meets Dejah Thoris, the Princess of Helium, who is a member of the humanoid red Martian race, and rescues her from the green Martians, and they fall in love. There's a whole series of novels in the Barsoom series, all of which would be appropriate for the first week of Rocket Summer. I was thinking of picking up where I left off last year, and perhaps starting with the 6th volume, The Mastermind of Mars. This was first published in the magazine Amazing Stories Annual, Volume 1, on July 15th, 1927. The first book edition was published in March of 1928. In this novel, Burroughs shifts the focus of the series for the second time, the first having been from the early protagonists, John Carter and Dejah Thoris, to their children after the third book. Now he moves to a completely new hero, Ulysses Paxton, an Earthman like Carter, who is sent to Mars by looking at the red planet in the sky. On Mars, Paxton is taken in by an elderly mad scientist, Ras Thavas, the mastermind of the title, who educates him in the ways of Barsoom and bestows upon him the Martian name Vad Varo. Ras has perfected techniques of transplanting brains, which he uses to provide rich elderly Martians with youthful new bodies for a profit. Earlier this year, I received a most wonderful and generous gift from Michael K. Vaughan after I had talked in a tag video. I think I was doing the Dream Shelf book tag, which was created by Gavin at Genre Books. And this is where you're sort of imagining, if you could have any book at all, what would you want to have? And I talked about how I wanted the Wesleyan anthology of science fiction. and lo and behold, Michael K. Vaughan sent me a copy of this incredible book. This anthology features over 150 years worth of the best science fiction short stories, and they are arranged chronologically. So in this volume, there are at least 8 stories that would fit the first week of Rocket Summer. Stories by authors such as Jules Verne, H.G. Wells, Edmund Hamilton, Leslie Stone, and C.L. Moore. So I'm going to read around in this anthology as well during week 1. I also have the Science Fiction Hall of Fame, Volume 1, 1929 to 1964. And this book is going to provide me with a wealth of stories for Rocket Summer. The first week of Rocket Summer has, in this collection, at least, I forget how many there were, there were at least the first 3 stories in here by Lester Del Rey, John W. Campbell, and Stanley G. Weinbaum. All of those would fit the first week of Rocket Summer. Additionally, about a year ago, I purchased the 2-volume American Library set of classic science fiction written by women. And the first volume, The Future is Female, 25 classic science fiction stories by women from the pulp pioneers to Ursula K. Le Guin. This first volume basically is Rocket Summer. And in this collection, writers, there are several writers from the 1920s and the 1930s, including Claire Winger Harris, Leslie F. Stone, C.L. Moore, again, and that's it. That's it from the 20s and the 30s. So I will also read some pioneering women as well. I also have another anthology, Sisters of Tomorrow, the first women of science fiction. And this collection also contains short stories from Harris, Stone, and Moore, and a few others as well. And for the first week, there are stories by people such as Amelia Reynolds Long, Dorothy Gertrude Quick, and Lilith Lorraine. This anthology documents how women in the early 20th century contributed to the science fiction magazine community. And it showcases work that they produced, including short stories, editorials, poetry, science journalism, and some illustrations as well. Okay, week number 2 is devoted to the 1940s. For this decade, I'm going to focus exclusively on short stories. Each one of these great anthologies that I just showed contains numerous stories from the 1940s. The Wesleyan anthology, again, from Michael, this contains stories by greats such as Isaac Asimov, Clifford D. Simak, Theodore Sturgeon, and Judith Merrill. The first volume of the Science Fiction Hall of Fame also contains a bunch of really, great pioneers in science fiction. This one has stories by some of the people that I just mentioned, as well as Robert A. Heinlein, A.E. Van Vogt, Louis Paget, Frederick Brown, and others. And another anthology that I have, edited by Anne and Jeff Vandermeer. This is The Big Book of Science Fiction. This also has just a wealth of short stories from the 1940s, and I was delighted to find a story by Jorge Luis Borges, and again, Clifford D. Simak, and also my favorite, Ray Bradbury. So I think I'm going to be checking those out as well. Now, week 3 is devoted to the 1950s, and I have more possibilities for the 1950s than I could ever possibly read in a week. I was thinking that we probably need a couple of months devoted to the 1950s. So in trying to come up with some possibilities, I came up with a couple of novels and a whole bunch of short stories. The novels that I'm considering for the 1950s, and this is one that comes highly recommended to me by many of my friends in science fiction, and this is John Wyndham's The Day of the Triffids. And I've been wanting to read this, and I'm thinking Rocket Summer might be the perfect time. And this was written, this comes from the 1950s. And also a book that I purchased secondhand last year that I haven't had a chance to read yet is Jack Finney's The Body Snatchers. And this is also from the 1950s. Each one of these anthologies has more short stories from the 1950s than I could possibly read. But some of the names that come up in all of these anthologies, James Blish, Isaac Asimov, the Strugatsky brothers, Richard Matheson, whom I also just read for Horror Mayhem, Fritz Lieber, Arthur C. Clarke, and Daniel Keyes, and Ray Bradbury. Ray Bradbury is in all of the anthologies, and I have this beautiful collection of Ray Bradbury stories. This book contains 100 of his most celebrated tales. He is one of my very favorite writers in science fiction, and I will definitely read around in this volume. Last year for Rocket Summer, I read Ray Bradbury's collection of stories, The Martian Chronicles, and this is what I was reading from at the beginning of this video. The very first story is entitled January 1999 Rocket Summer, and that's where Michael got the title for this event that we're embarking on. Okay, for the 1960s, I hope to read one of the books that we are actually planning to read for the Clifford D. Simak reading group. And that's the Pig and Whistle reading group. We're about a month off our schedule, so the book that was supposed to be for June, I'm hoping to read for July, because this was also written in the 1960s. And this is Time is the Simplest Thing. I have really come to love all of the novels that I have read by Clifford D. Simak through this group, the Simak reading group that Shawn D. Standfast started. And so I really, definitely want to read at least one novel by Simak for Rocket Summer, and some of the short stories also in this volume of Simak short stories. I Am Crying All Inside and Other Stories. This is volume 1 of the complete short fiction of Simak. several of these were written in the 1960s also, so I think I'm going to make my 1960s. I'm going to try to focus a good part of my 1960s week on the writing of Clifford D. Simak, who I think is maybe my second favorite writer that I've discovered since I've been on this science fiction journey, next to Ray Bradbury. All of the anthologies that I've been showing, they all have several stories from the 1960s as well, including a couple of names I haven't mentioned yet: J.G. Ballard, Frederick Pohl, Philip K. Dick, Robert Silverberg, and another favorite of mine, Ursula K. Le Guin. So hopefully I'll get to read at least a short story by each of those. So I am so excited to be participating in Rocket Summer once again this July, and I hope that you will consider joining us for Rocket Summer as well. If any of the things that I just talked about sound appealing to you, or if there's anything else from classic science fiction that you've been, wanting to read, I hope that you will join us in the month of July. As always, I thank you for watching. I hope that you're doing well. I'll speak with you again soon. Take care.